Hey, so I wanted to talk a little bit about what I've learned over the years about how to get attention for ideas. Um, Good ideas are these interesting things where you know, people want to share them. Um, but what's really difficult is when we don't know how to get people to recognize that they're good ideas. And I think that I used to fall into this intellectual trap of thinking that knowing was the same as understanding. Um, but what's difficult to see is what we know that other people don't. And over the years, I got really, really accustomed to practicing two things while pretending to be smart. And I got accustomed to understanding the importance of dumbing things down. At least that's what I call it. I typically don't refer to it as that publicly. I'll talk about it, explain it to me like I'm 8, explain it to me like I'm 5. Those are things that I've stolen from pop culture references. Put in the comments if you know where I stole that from. The other one is storytelling. And storytelling is something I learned when I didn't have enough money to do Toastmasters. So I started to do stand-up, and I realized I'm a storyteller comedian. So I got accustomed to telling stories, really, really like thinking about how to present the stories, because I was always pretty natural at telling stories, but I would, if anyone's known me for very long, I would loop around and tell stories in a non-linear fashion, and that was frustrating for a lot of people. So what I've learned through this is, number one, just because you know what you know doesn't mean you know how to get people to care about it. And that's really difficult because there's two types of people with ideas. There's those that know how and those that know why. And interestingly enough, the people who understand the how, they struggle explaining why people should be interested in their ideas. And I think that has a lot to do with the intellectual trap that I fell into of overcomplicating things. And you're going to need to feel like you're oversimplifying things. But it's kind of like telling a joke. It doesn't matter if it makes sense. It doesn't matter if you find it funny. It matters if your audience finds it funny. And the interesting thing about an original story, an original idea, an original joke is it doesn't matter if you're telling it right. It matters if your audience gets it. And now this may seem like you're walking a fine line between lying. Well, take it from me. I used to be a compulsive, just not an impulsive liar, but definitely compulsive. So I lied because it was easier than saying I don't know. But the more I got into the habit of saying I don't know, the more I realized that as long as people didn't lose confidence in me, and I didn't lose confidence in myself when communicating my thoughts or what I did know, even if I wasn't certain, if I just literally threw in I don't know exactly how to explain this, but I'm going to try. You leave yourself open to reevaluation at a later time. And people are more accustomed to accepting this reality than I was ever taught as an intellectual. I'm starting to realize that there's not as much value in intellectualism in the internet era when you can look up stuff later. So I got into the habit of saying I don't know a lot, and instead of lying, I would just say I don't know. I made sure to focus that people didn't lose confidence in me, and that I didn't try and over-explain things that I wish I had a concise explanation for, and I really just got into the habit of keeping people entertained. And this is, when it comes to problem solvers, this seems to be the last thing people want to do. They want to be honest, and honest tends to be associated with facts. But honesty has a lot more to do with confidence than we would realize. Because if we lose people's confidence, we could be right, but they could feel like we're lying. And that's the most frustrating thing for like scientists or developers or coders or entrepreneurs or whoever that I've met, is when people accuse them of lying literally because they've lost confidence in them. And that's why, the best liars in the world, con men, they call it a confidence game. That's actually where the word con comes from, is confidence. So, but don't be confused, because confidence is associated to trust, and confidence for most people, I would say most people, has a whole lot more to do with who is the messenger of the information than it does the actual data being presented. And this is frustrating for any scientist, salesman, engineer, whatever out there. Like, that, like, what you know. It's just you don't know what people don't know, and they kind of want you to be their teacher, and that can get frustrating. So you summarize things instead of, simplifying them. And oftentimes this isn't because you don't want to. It's just you haven't gotten to the point where you know how. And this is really, really difficult in the experimental phase, which for entrepreneurs is literally, every moment up until, you've made it, and, you have that clout, and people will accept literally anything that comes out of your mouth. Look at, Elon Musk and people like that. Like, it doesn't matter if he's right. People will believe him when they say, like, how did you make this happen? How did you do it? Like, even if they don't understand it, they're going to trust that he's not wrong. And if we don't have that kind of clout, we have to understand, like, we have to sell people on us first. And if we don't, we betray our very ideas that we're trying to create. I can't stress enough the value of storytelling in our modern age. I mean, if you ever think that it's ridiculous the amount of time people spend on TV shows or movies, media like that, or fiction reading, or music, that people overindulge in that kind of stuff, you probably aren't as familiar with storytelling as you need to be to appreciate that stories are a way of telling truth with lies. This is what storytellers know. And for a lot of people, the word lie is a triggering word. But lying is a tool. It can be a dangerous tool, just like a weapon. But interestingly enough, in the right context, we can know that a lie is a lie, like a story, like a fiction story. But we embrace it. We embrace it with the intention of being entertained. And what's really interesting is when it comes to day-to-day interactions, people want stories so much. You're either entertaining them or you're not. And that's why people either want to listen to you or they don't. And this isn't fair. It's just the way people are. We have a believing brain that cares about stories. So plain and simple, we like stories that feel familiar to us. And if we don't know how to tell stories and we just try and spit out facts and reason and logic, people aren't going to care unless there's a story to encapsulate it. I mean, look at the movie Interstellar. That was like originally a textbook that came out in the 90s, literally explaining quantum engineering to PhD students with a story in the textbook. It followed the hero's journey in the story of the text. It is a textbook, but also a storybook, because the concepts were so abstract to most physicists that they realized the only way they could hold people's attention and get them to actually finish the book was to care about a story. And I think that's really, really important. And if we're not good at telling our story, it means we don't trust ourselves or we don't trust other people, which are really two sides of the same coin. And there's no such thing as a one-sided coin. And that's not bad that we don't trust ourselves or we don't trust other people. It's just a fact. And if that's just your fact, then, learning how to tell your story is a great way to improve in that area. Everyone struggles with that to some degree, but it just takes practice like everything else. But if you're an entrepreneur or you're a salesman or you're a business owner, you're an engineer, you're a scientist, you're a coder, you're a developer, what I would suggest doing is checking out what Alan Alda is doing with scientists. He's teaching them improv comedy to help them understand how to explain what they do to other scientists and the non-scientific minds. A great example of amazing storytellers are Elon Musk and Neil deGrasse Tyson. They're both really good at telling stories, other people's stories, their own stories. I especially love how even Elon Musk will talk about simulation theory. Instead of addressing religion, he'll talk about simulation theory because people generally can't compute how somebody could do what he does and not account for a spiritual or religious aspect, some sort of moral framework that they can look up elsewhere. So you just talked about the most scientific, religious theory out there right now based on probability and string theory. Like, he doesn't even really admit whether or not he believes it or subscribes to it, but he will talk about how it's probably the most correct. It's the only one that's logically founded, where he's not wrong, and he's not lying by saying it's absolutely right and everything else is wrong. He's not making those kind of bold claims. He's kind of almost putting out an innuendo that he believes in that. And that's really, really important because a lot of times people don't know how to trust us unless they can relate to us. So if we leave out certain value points that are important to them, or we attack certain value points, people stop listening. And there are 3 very important value points that this world relies on, even if people don't realize it. And that's the want of money, the want of, a ruler, and the want to not feel wrong. And if we can be vulnerable and give people something to latch onto, even if they don't understand it, but just as long as what we're talking about doesn't attack what they believe in. Like, right now I'm working on some stuff that has to do with leveling up the idea of money. It's kind of like Money 2.0, but it will make money as we know it obsolete. It brings the power of barter and trade when combined with money and replaces the money aspect with something digital, because money is an analog algorithm that requires us to think. And we can now replace that with algorithms to get the same results that we have when we use money, but actually better results, which is, kind of what money did to barter and trade. And what's really interesting is it looks more like barter and trade because it's using algorithms to replace that money middleman that needs money changers and leaves the value speculation up to us. And we get more of what we want with less thinking. And that's really useful because we get more for our work effort. And these are the sort of things where, like, it doesn't really even matter whether or not I'm for or against money. Like, it's when I tell a story like that, people don't feel threatened when it comes to whether or not they want money or they fear that without money we go back to chaos. when that's not really the case. I mean, people didn't understand credit cards in the 1970s, but now it doesn't even matter if you understand them. They make life more convenient than carrying around cash, and it's safer than carrying around cash. So that being said, like, everything levels up with technology. And these are the sort of things that, like, storytelling can come in really handy, because it's about whether or not you are trusted, not whether or not your ideas are trustworthy or whether or not they're even trustless. If people don't trust you, they're not going to trust what you're saying. And if they don't trust what you're saying, they won't even tell you that they don't trust you, that they believe you're lying, but they don't want to think. So if you don't give them something to believe in, you are really only going to get the attention of the people who know how to think like you. And those are never going to be the people that are your customers, that are your fans, whatever. Those are, it's just going to be your potential competition. So storytelling is essential in gaining progress in the world we're in today. It's not the same as lying. Not as we commonly use the word lying. It is not true. So stories don't always have to be true. That's why parables and metaphors are so powerful. But metaphors and parables are a way of telling the truth with lies. I use the word lie in a very neutral way, a very scientific way. I don't condone lying because it's really, really difficult to, say what I say without people insinuating that I'm condoning lying with the way they define it. So, if you don't instinctively understand what I'm saying and agree with me completely and outright, then no, I don't condone lying at all. But if you understand that when you go and watch a movie that is fiction, and you're not expecting that actually happened, or if you're watching even a true story as a movie, but you don't believe that the actors are the actual people that went through this in the actual events that happened, you understand that, like, you're willingly submitting to believing in a lie to understand data connected together through a story. And that's what the storyteller's lie is. That is what it means to tell truth with lies, because lying is sometimes a weapon and it is sometimes the truth. It's depending on the context and whether or not you're willing to admit that the lie is a lie if people ask. That's why if people go to see a movie, they don't need to ask whether or not that was live and actually happened and, was real. They go in already knowing that a movie is a lie. And what's interesting is people assume that what we say is true. So as long as we're not wrong and we're honest, if we don't know how to be absolutely correct with something, we be honest and say, I don't know, I could get you more information later. These are great go-to phrases. So people know to take what we're saying with a grain of salt. We want them to believe us, even if we don't know how to be precise, and we can get back to them later. And that's something that, is very, very valuable to know, to, not just completely justify making anything and everything up, but how to tell the truth without losing confidence, which I think is more important than ever these days. So I wanted to share that with you. A couple of confessions wrapped up in there and insights that hopefully can help you make decisions to improve your life, improve your business, and share this. Make sure to check out my YouTube channel. I think it's about time. You can check out a link in the description of this. Check out my Facebook group if you haven't joined it. It's www.libraryofconsciousness.com. That'll take you right to the Facebook group. Follow me on Twitter if you want. That's data over ideal. That has 2 underscores in it, so it's data underscore over underscore ideal. Check me out on Twitter if you want. And I try and post motivational stuff on my Instagram, so if you check me out there, that's Jace Not Chase, and that's Chase spelled with a C, just like Jace is, Jace, not CHACE. So check those out. Follow me, mock me, whatever you want to do. Share this with people if that's what you want to do. I appreciate any and all of your attention, especially if you've made it this far. So thank you very much. Make sure to follow the page Quantum Deep Thoughts on Facebook, and be prepared for more. Thank you.